The internal anatomy of insects involves primarily the organs which carry on the vital functions of life. These organs are protected from outside forces by the body wall. If parts of certain organs project as flaps or lobes beyond the body outline, they are encased by a thin mantle of body wall and are thus within the confines of the exoskeleton. Although diverse, all insects are quite similar in overall design internally and externally. The respiratory system. An insect breathes by means of spiracles which are situated along the sides of its body. Each hole-like structure of spiracle leads into a large tube called a trachea. The large tubes divide into small tubes, which in turn divide into still smaller tubes that branch out to all the cells of the body. Trachea and oxygen diffusion. Insects in general do not have an oxygen-carrying chemical in their blood, so oxygen reaches cells by other means. Most insects have a waterproof cuticle, but some insects live in moist areas and are sedentary. Their cuticle is permeable to water and they obtain sufficient oxygen by diffusion across their cuticle. However, most insects have a special respiratory system comprising a system of internal tubes called trachea, which branch and rebranch. Very fine branches, tracheoles, penetrate individual cells. Trachea has spiral stiffening support on their walls to prevent collapse. Air enters from the outside through spiracles. Typically, there are two pairs of spiracles laterally on the thorax and 8 pairs laterally on the abdomen. Most of the path for oxygen to diffuse from the spiracle to the cell is through the air-filled tracheal tubes. Since oxygen is delivered directly, the circulatory system is not used to carry oxygen and is therefore greatly reduced. It has no closed vessels, that is, no veins or arteries, consisting of little more than a single perforated dorsal tube which pulses peristatistically and in doing so helps circulate the hemolymph inside the body cavity. Rate of gas diffusion is determined by differences in concentration at each end of the system, molecular weight of the gas. The lower the molecular weight, the faster is the diffusion rate. Permeability of the substrate. Spiracles. Spiracles are the opening for gaseous exchange. However, insects need to avoid water loss through their spiracles and also to prevent contamination by dust, etc. Spiracles are therefore usually equipped with opening and closing devices and filtering lobes or hairs in an atrium before the beginning of the trachea. Very active insects have internal air sacs as extra reservoirs as part of the tracheal system. They also may employ mechanical ventilation along the larger trachea. Bees and wasps may extend and telescope their abdomens to pump air along. Aquatic respiration. Many aquatic insects must return periodically to the surface to breathe. Mosquito larvae have tubes connecting to the air at the water surface. There are hydrofuge hairs, water resistant, associated with the spiracles to break the surface tension of the water and to keep water out when the insect is underwater. Other insects such as stonefly, dragonfly and mayfly nymphs have tracheal gills whereby oxygen diffuses from the water to fine surface trachea. Water beetles take a bubble of air with them underwater. Their spiracles open into the bubble. As the oxygen in the bubble is used up, the oxygen pressure in the bubble drops to that of the surrounding water, so that more oxygen diffuses into the bubble from the water. In this way, the bubble remains usable for a long time. Bloodworms, midge larvae, live in the mud of stagnant pools where there is very little oxygen. These insect larvae are one of the few which have hemoglobin in their blood, and this hemoglobin is more efficient than ours. Small internal parasites may diffuse oxygen across their cuticle. Others may have spiracles at the end of siphons which open into the trachea of their host or penetrate the skin of their host into the air. Circulatory system. An insect's blood does not flow through veins and arteries as ours does. Blood fills the whole cavity of the insect's body and bathes all the organs and muscles. Hemolymph. Hemolymph or hemolymph is a fluid analogous to the blood in vertebrates that circulate in the interior of the arthropod body, remaining in direct contact with the animal's tissues. It is composed of a fluid plasma in which hemolymph cells called hemocytes are suspended. In addition to hemocytes, the plasma may also contain many chemicals. It is the major tissue type of the open circulatory system characteristic of arthropods. Example, arachnids, crustaceans and insects. In addition, some non-arthropods such as mollusks possess a hemolymphatic circulatory system. Blood constituents. Hemolymph contains molecules, ions and cells regulating chemical exchanges between tissues. Hemolymph is encased insect body cavity or hemocoel. The main constituents are water about 90%, inorganic ions like dissolved salts of sodium, potassium, calcium and magnesium, organic molecules like amino acids, sugar for muscle use, blood cells. Blood does not generally contain an oxygen carrying pigment such as hemoglobin. Functions of the blood. The main function of insect blood, hemolymph, is that of transport, and it bathes the insect's body organs, making up usually less than 25% of an insect's body weight. Some of the functions of the insect hemolymph are 1. Lubricant. Hydraulic medium. Hemolymph can transfer forces to different parts of the body. Example, molting insects break through their old skin by forcing blood towards the ecdysial lines in their head and thorax. Similarly, newly emerged butterflies expand their wings by forcing blood through them, and flies emerge from their puparium by using a blood-filled protrusion in their head. Transport. Sugars, fats, proteins, wastes, hormones are transported by hemolymph. However, the blood does not carry oxygen. Protection. Blood cells. Phagocytosis. Hemocytes in the hemolymph helps in ingestion of foreign particles such as bacteria and debris. Encapsulation. Hemocytes captivate invading organisms like internal parasites by clumping around them. Detoxification. Hemolymph renders insecticides non-toxic in many insects. Blood clotting. Defense. Many insects like blister beetles produce a strong irritant which is extruded in the blood through the leg joints when attacked. Rate of blood flow. The flow of the blood in the body cavity is helped by general muscular contractions and movement. There also pumping muscles on either side of the dorsal vessel, and in active insects, additional pumping organs at the bases of the wings, legs and antennae. The pulse rate is controlled by hormones and varies with temperature and activity. Active moths have a pulse rate of 140 per minute, while pupae have a pulse rate of 1 per hour. The open circulatory system is rather inefficient. Dye injected into a cockroach takes 5 minutes to permeate the insect, while a human blood cell takes less than a minute to travel from the heart to toe to heart. Method of transport. In the grasshopper, the closed portion of the system consists of tubular hearts and an aorta running along the dorsal side of the insect. The heart pumps hemolymph into the sinuses of the hemocoel, where exchanges of materials take place. The volume of the hemolymph needed for such a system is kept to a minimum by a reduction in the body cavity. The hemocoel is divided into chambers called sinuses. Coordinated movements of the body muscles gradually bring back the hemolymph to the dorsal sinus surrounding the hearts. Between contractions, tiny valves in the wall of the hearts open and allow hemolymph to enter. Hemolymph fills all the interior, that is, the hemocoel of the animal's body, and surrounds all cells. It contains hemocyanin, a copper-based protein that turns blue in color when oxygenated instead of the iron-based hemoglobin in red blood cells found in vertebrates, thus giving hemolymph a blue-green color rather than the red color of the vertebrate blood. When not oxygenated, hemolymph quickly loses its color and appears grey. Excretory system. The excretory system maintains a constant internal environment by regulating water and ionic balance and eliminating nitrogenous waste. Malpighian tubules. These are the main excretory organs of the insect body. They are fine, one cell thick, lying free within the body cavity or attached to the outside of the gut. They absorb waste from the hemocoel either by diffusion across a concentration gradient or by active transport. The number of Malpighian tubules varies and they enter the alimentary canal at the junction of the mid and the hind guts. Feces. Reabsorption of salts and water occurs in the rectum. The feces or urine, if liquid, contains waste from both the alimentary canal and the Malpighian tubules. The texture is variable depending upon the diet and ranges from a clear liquid in aphids to hard pellets or a dry powdery material in borers. Urea as nitrogenous waste. Nitrogenous wastes are eliminated either as ammonia, as in aquatic insects, meat-eating maggots and aphids. Urea, as in clothes moths and humans. Uric acid, as in most insects. Nervous system. Nervous system consists of a brain located in the head and two nerve cords that lie side by side along the floor of the thorax and abdomen. The brain receives information from the eyes and antennae and controls the insect body activity as a whole. Another nerve center in the head is connected to the brain and controls the insect's mouth parts. Each of the two nerve cords contain a cluster of nerve cells called a ganglion in each segment of the thorax and abdomen. The two ganglia in each segment are fused and form a sort of little brain that controls the activities of that segment. The ganglia often can work without the brain. For example, many insects that have had their heads cut off can still walk, mate, and lay eggs. In some insects, the three pairs of ganglia in the thorax are fused into one. Various pairs of ganglia in the abdomen are also fused in many insects. In common with other animals, the basic component of the nervous system is the neuron or nerve cell, which consists of a cell body with two extensions, the axon and the dendrite. The dendrite receives stimuli while the axon transmits impulses either to another neuron or to an organ such as a muscle. Various chemicals such as acetylcholine are involved in the transmission of impulses across the synapse. The insect central nervous system consists of a brain, subesophageal ganglion and a ventral nerve cord. Central nervous system. An insect's sensory, motor and physiological processes are controlled by the central nervous system along with the endocrine system. Being the principal division of the nervous system, it consists of a brain, a ventral nerve cord and a subesophageal ganglion which is connected to the brain by two nerves extending around each side of the esophagus. The brain has three lobes. Protocerebrum, innervating the compound eyes and the ocelli. Deutocerebrum, innervating the antennae. Tritocerebrum, innervating the foregut and the labrum. The ventral nerve cord extends from the subesophageal ganglion posteriorly. A layer of connective tissue called the neurilemma covers the brain, ganglia, major peripheral nerves and the ventral nerve cords. The head capsule, made up of 6 fused segments, has 6 pairs of ganglia. The first 3 pairs are fused into the brain, while the 3 following pairs are fused into the subesophageal ganglion. The thoracic segments have one ganglion on each side, which are connected into a pair, one pair per segment. This arrangement is also seen in the abdomen, but only in the first 8 segments. Many species of insects have reduced numbers of ganglia due to the fusion or reduction. Some cockroaches have just 6 ganglia in the abdomen, whereas the wasp, Vespa crabro, has only 2 in the thorax and 3 in the abdomen. And some, like the housefly, Musca domestica, have all the body ganglia fused into a single large thoracic ganglion. The ganglia of the central nervous system acts as a coordinating centers with their own specific autonomy, where each may coordinate impulses in specified regions of the insect's body. Peripheral nervous system. This consists of motor neuron axons that branch out to the muscles from the ganglia of the central nervous system, parts of the sympathetic nervous system, and the sensory neurons of the cuticular sense organs that receive chemical, thermal, mechanical, or visual stimuli from the insect's environment. The sympathetic nervous system includes nerves and the ganglia that innervate the gut both posteriorly and anteriorly, some endocrine organs, the spiracles of the tracheal system, and the reproductive organs. Sensory organs. Chemical senses include the use of chemoreceptors related to taste and smell, affecting mating, habitat selection, feeding, and parasite-host relationships. Taste is usually located on the mouthparts of the insect, but in some insects such as the bees, wasps, and ants, taste organs can also be found on the antennae. Taste organs can also be found on the tarsi of moths, butterflies, and flies. Olfactory sensilla enable insects to smell and are usually found in the antennae. Chemoreceptor sensitivity related to smell in some substances is very high, and some insects can detect particular odors that are at low concentrations miles from their original source. Endocrine and exocrine glands. Endocrine system. Hormones are the chemical substances that are transported in the insect's body fluids or hemolymph that carry messages away from their point of synthesis to sites where physiological processes are influenced. These hormones are produced by glandular, neuroglandular, and neuronal centers. In insects, 4 endocrine centers have been identified. Neurosecretory cells in the brain can produce one or more hormones that affect growth, reproduction, homeostasis, and metamorphosis. Corpora cardiaca are a pair of neuroglandular bodies that are found behind the brain and on either sides of the aorta. These not only produce their own neurohormones, but they also store and release other neurohormones including PTTH, prothoracicotropic hormone, or the brain hormone, which stimulates the secretory activity of the prothoracic glands, playing an integral role in molting. Prothoracic glands are diffuse, paired glands located at the back of the head or in the thorax. These glands secrete an ecdysteroid called ecdysone or the molting hormone, which initiates the epidermal molting process. Additionally, it plays a role in accessory reproductive glands in the female, differentiation of ovarioles, and in the process of egg production. Corpora alata are small, paired glandular bodies originating from the epithelium located on either side of the foregut. They secrete the juvenile hormone which regulate reproduction and metamorphosis. Exocrine system. Exocrine glands are glands that produce and secrete substances onto the epithelial surface by way of a duct. Example of exocrine glands is the sweat gland. It is reported that 9 exocrine glands in diverse insect taxa, which are scattered all over the body from the very anterior head to the very posterior abdomen. Summary. In this chapter, elementary information about respiratory system, circulatory system, excretory system, sense organs, exocrine and endocrine glands are described. Respiratory system consists of spiracles which lead into a large tube called a trachea and in turn lead to smaller tubules called tracheoles, which repeatedly branch till it reaches individual cells. Oxygen is supplied to cells through diffusion. An insect's blood is called hemolymph, which fills the whole cavity of the insect's body and bathes all the organs and muscles. It is varied in functions. Excretory system consists of Malpighian tubules and the nitrogenous waste product is uric acid. Nervous system consists of the central nervous system, peripheral nervous system and sensory cells. Endocrine system has neurosecretory cells, corpora cardiac, prothoracic glands and corpora alata. Exocrine system has 9 exocrine glands in diverse insect groups which are scattered all over the body from the very anterior head to the very posterior abdomen. Thank you.